Welcome. Thanks for coming out today. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to participate and share your thoughts with the Middlebury Economic Health Committee. We all appreciate that you're very busy running your businesses and being the economy of Middlebury. So we really do appreciate you being here. A little bit of housekeeping. Bathrooms are out that way in the hallway. There are There's some beverages over in the corner there, cups and napkins. If you need them to go with your lunch, feel free to eat your lunch. This is a brown bag discussion, so I know we're doing this during your lunch, so go ahead and eat. There's some papers on the table here. There's a list of people who RSVP'd, a copy of the invitation for today, and a copy of the committee's charge and membership if you need that for anything. And of course, that's always available along with all the other information on the committee on the town's website. Please shut off your phones or silence your phones. And we've got several recordings going on. Beth is doing minutes. Middlebury Community Television is going to record this, so we'll be able to put it up on the town's website. And Elizabeth from my office is going to record kind of salient points, big ideas, things like that in real time, so we have that in front of you during the meeting. So for the recording, please speak up. You're supposed to be right in front of these mics for them to work, so when you're talking, please speak up loudly, and if you keep the side noise down, because these will pick up the side noise as well. So we do want to try to keep this fairly informal. It's not a hearing, it's a discussion. But I also want to ensure a well-rounded discussion and full participation. So please raise your hand to be recognized. When I recognize you, please say who you are so Beth can get that for the minutes. And kind of keep your comments brief and to the point so everybody gets a chance to participate. And please try to keep your comments focused on the charge of the committee, which was in the invitation. Broadly, it's to make recommendations to the Middlebury Select Board regarding economic development tools, policies, strategies, and actions that the town can use to maintain and improve the economic health of the community. Pretty broad, I know, but let's try not to go off a field and have a gripe session. We'd really like to hear your thoughts, what the issues are, your concerns, and ideas that we pass on to the select board, that we should make recommendations on to the select board. If you don't get to make a point or you have something else you think of, feel free to submit it in writing later today or tomorrow to that same email address that you RSVP to. So we're going to start with a round of introductions. A lot of folks here, and probably most of you know each other, but let's introduce ourselves. Just give your name, your affiliation if you have one, and kind of a very brief statement about what concern or issue brought you here today. And then we'll have what I hope is a free-flowing discussion of ideas and questions, especially focused on the charge and the questions that we put out to you in the invitation, and any other thoughts. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and we'll start right here. Go around, and then we'll do the outside.
I'm Elizabeth Burdine. I'm the Finance Director at Addison County Economic Development Corporation. Your whiteboard writer this morning.
I'm Steve Boyce. I'm with American Flatbread.
And say if you're on the committee.
Oh, I'm on the committee.
I'm Mike Corbett. I'm with Vermont Economic Development Authority. We have a satellite office in Middlebury.
I'm Becky Dayton. I'm a member of the committee, and I own the Vermont Bookshop downtown.
I'm Sivan Kotel from Stonecutter Spirits.
I'm Kelly Hickey. I'm with Edie and Glow, a small business in Weybridge.
I'm Susan Shashak, and I'm with Caroline Stream, a small business in East Middlebury.
My name is Bill Brooks. I'm the Executive Director of the Sheldon Museum right across the street. These pictures up on the wall are all lent by us to the town, and I come here, my concern is parking and snow removal. Since we had our train exhibit 1st of December, we've had 2,400 people, mostly children, come through the museum. And I just want all the businesses to recognize what the nonprofits here, ourselves and the Folk Life Center and Middlebury College Museum of Art bring to your community. And also the library, of course.
Victoria Nguyen,
Baker. My wife and I own Sweet Cecily, and my main concern is, like Bill's, parking, and when the town is closed for 10 weeks in the summer of 2020, how we're going to manage that, and what we're supposed to say to people who are customers when they say, "Do you have a bathroom?" Because it is a huge problem. The people that need to use a restroom and there's no place for them to go if the library is closed or whatever.
I'm Vince Todd from Lagronk, Sperry and Wool, and I'm just here to listen and learn.
Suzanne Bennett with the residents at Otter Creek, a senior living community in town, in a new position doing business development and community outreach, and looking to learn what the challenges are.
I'm Melanie Dunn, I'm the executive director of the residents of Otter Creek, and I'm just kind of here to listen and learn as well.
Travis Romano with G-Stone Motors, the general manager. Again, just to listen and learn and get involved.
Dan McIntosh, Fourth and Goal Sports.
Ben Wells, Marquee Theater.
What was it?
Gregory, Marquee Theater.
Theater.
Gregory Tom, owner of Main Street Stationery.
Sarah Kranz, Middlebury resident, and also I work for the nonprofit, the Vermont Small Business Development Center, so just very interested in our small business community.
Claire Tebbs, many of you know me as your regional planner, which I am no longer. Planning consultant, and I'm also here as a new board member for the Middlebury Studio School.
Farhad Khan, I'm on the committee. I am also on the select board, and I own $1 Market.
Scott Gemignani, I'm also on the committee, and I own the Tinker and Smithy Games Store.
Mike Capra, Identica Chevrolet, on the committee as well.
John Frieden, a member of the committee.
Andrea Murray, I'm co-owner of Vermont Integrated Architecture, and I'm also on the Middlebury Climate Economy Capacity Group Steering Committee, and I'm interested in the intersection of business and business development and the climate, where there are opportunities there.
I'm Ben Esther-Calvi. I'm the general manager of Vermont Center Company on Exchange Street, Woodchuck, and I sit on the committee.
Hi, my name is Jordan Benjamin, and I'm the financial officer of Aqua IT.
Fred Kenny, director of the Addison County Economic Development Corporation and chair of the committee.
I'm Dave Hills with Waypoint Management Services. Mostly here being here today, but I am a native Middleburyan, so I have an inherent interest.
Bill Sakes, Multi-Builders, a general contractor out of Waybridge, just here to listen.
Brian Phelps, Stonewall. I'm a business and commercial real estate broker.
I'm Nick Ardham. I actually have two roles here. One in my day job, I'm a contract fire protection engineer for the National Park Service. And yes, some of us are working. And I'm also and it's a group of, there's a large number of us who actually live and work, live in the area and work on the larger scale. I also am chair or vice chair of the select board. So in that respect, I'm here to hear and understand what can we as a town do better to enhance the strength of the business community here, and how can we think differently and think bigger, because I travel extensively and the issue of economic development is something I hear all over the country. How do we do better? And I see some communities doing a really good job, and I see some communities doing a really weak job, so how do we do the good job?
I'm Jim Gish, community liaison for Middlebury's Rail and Bridge Project.
And I'm Peggy Burns. I'm the director of the Center for Careers and Internships at Middlebury College, and we are very vested in keeping our students here in the summer for internships and also post-graduation for jobs.
I'm Amy Ryan. I own IPJ Real Estate on Main Street. I'm also the chair of the Downtown Improvement District Commission and a board member of the Better Middlebury Partnership.
Karen Duguay, and I'm a committee member and also the executive director of the Better Middlebury Partnership.
Ross Conrad, local beekeeper, Dancing Bee Gardens.
There?
Hi, I'm Sue Witter, otherwise known as the new Dave Donahue. So hello, everybody. Special assistant to the president and director of community relations. I also work with the board. I'm here in Cox, deeply invested in the economic vitality of the town.
I'm Barbara Harding from Otter Creek Used Books in the Historic Marble Works.
Can I ask you two to sit in the circle?
Sure, I just didn't want to interrupt you.
Come on. Somebody came in after we started, all right? Mike.
Mike Rainville, Maple Landmark Woodcraft out on Exchange Street.
Anybody else?
There's also a break right here.
Just to get into, oh, there's one more. Oh,
There's
no,
a
no,
chair.
no, over
Go
here.
across.
Sorry, I didn't know there was.
Why isn't anybody sitting there?
I don't know, I feel like I must smell or
So let's start with one of the questions that we sent out in the invitation, which is what are the current challenges facing your business? And if you try to keep it focused on challenges that the town of Middlebury can address. I know a lot of retail businesses have issues with competing with the internet, and if there's something you think the town can help you with on that, let's talk about it. But let's start with that general question. What are your current challenges facing your business? Anybody?
I'll start.
Amy?
One of the challenges facing, I think, real estate in general is the opportunities that are lost on what used to be called trailing spouses, but there's a new PC term for it I've forgotten already.
Talented partners.
Right, okay. When people come to Middlebury and either are interviewing at the college or the hospital or one of the cideries or places anywhere else, it's the partner who doesn't have a skill set that they can necessarily bring with them or they have a skill set they can bring with them, but they don't have a job opportunity necessarily. So our challenge is finding those holes for those other spouses to have employment so that that family can make the transition to the area. We do have a number of people who come here and interview for jobs and decide not to move to this area because only one of them is able to secure employment, and it's too much of a risk. The cost of living is too high to wing it.
So they locate elsewhere?
Theoretically, or they stay
live-
where they are,
Okay.
yeah.
So what could someone, and it may not be the town that addresses that, but we can make a recommendation to the town that they ask another organization in the region to address that issue. How would they do that? Do you have any suggestions on that?
Not specifically, but I think if the towns, not just Middlebury, but the whole, municipalities as a regional source made it easier for startup businesses or incubating spaces for businesses to grow. If those things happened more freely and more regularly, then there would be more job opportunities. I think the idea of having, one huge, large employer come to town has fallen on its face enough times. But if we can somehow, whether it's, I don't know if it's a select board or if it's Economic Development Corporation, whomever, but my feeling is that that needs to be somebody's job. And I don't know that that's the right role for the head of the Addison County Economic Development Corporation, or if it's some other job. But I feel like that idea gets, the can gets kicked down the road so many times that it needs to be somebody's focus.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Anybody else on that or another challenge for your business?
That result could certainly be a byproduct of the town being, making it possible for businesses to grow more freely, or making them, feel more wanted in town to be here.
Okay, let's leave it at that for now, but we can come back to that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
As retail.
I'm reminded to say your name, please, for Beth.
Sure, it's Barbara Harding from Otter Creek Used Books, and I'm in the Marble Works. I thought that this was a rather unique question because I've always have learned and have felt that my business is, what can I do for my business to let it grow, to meet its challenges. And I never looked at it as from a town perspective, like how can the town help me? So I was really thrown by that question, and also it really intrigued me. I haven't really thought of anything. I thought of a time when I did contact the town to see about putting a temporary sign up during the Chili Fest and was told that I couldn't. And I thought, why did I call? I should have just done it. And I was told that if I had done it, and if a town official had seen the sign, they would have removed it. And I thought, no, they wouldn't have, because there's too many people. So why didn't I just do it? So there was that kind of conflict. And I didn't fault him. I faulted myself more for taking that initiative to contact and seeking permission. I've not done it since. I mean, you know, I'm not even tempted it. But, you know, in talking with Ryan, working with Ryan Emilio at the Marble Works, and that signage that is there, I mean, I was part of that discussion. So that is really has been helpful. But, and everything that the neighborhood group,
Neighbors Together.
yeah, them, have been extremely helpful and very beneficial for a business like mine in the Marble Works. So.
Susan Shashak, and what I've always looked for from the town is basic infrastructure. I want the water, I want the sewer, I want sidewalks, I want walkability, I want people access, safety, all those kind of things that I pay my taxes for. I want them to work so that I don't have to be thinking about them or working on them while I'm trying to run my business.
And have they worked for the most part, or do you have challenges in any of those?
Well, there's always stuff that breaks, but I think that's, from my perspective, when I worked with the town, I was on the select board for many years, I thought it was really important for the town to focus on infrastructure and providing those things for everybody. It always breaks, but there's a difference between something breaking and something disintegrating that you have to replace. You know, you should be thinking about that, planning for it, and getting ahead of that. And I think that's, for me, all that I've ever expected from the town.
I think we're hearing from some other folks that infrastructure could also include services.
So definitely.
In an atmosphere that supports business.
You know, those opportunities to sell are also great too, like with the different special events that Better Middlebury Partnership has done, has created opportunities for my business to do a pop-up store downtown. So those are also been very key for me.
Anybody else on this question? Any board members want to amplify anything that's been said? Andrea?
I have a comment. We have
Andrea,
Andrea Murray from Integrated Architecture. I think in the architecture industry and also the related construction industry, we have trouble with finding entry-level or younger people to work both in our office but also in the construction trades. The construction industry is aging. It's one reason construction is so expensive right now, one of many. But because we have a much more highly skilled workforce that is going to be retiring very soon. And a lot of young people coming out of college don't want to go into the construction trades. I also think we have trouble having younger people in Middlebury because there isn't affordable housing for them. And there isn't a significant nightlife or after hours set of activities. I'm thinking of the 20s and early 30s.
So in addition to the infrastructure, amenities, keeping amenities strong and include, and another piece of the infrastructure is affordable housing. Any other, I know I've heard this from a lot of people in the trades, a couple of trade folks here, we're running into the same thing with finding, I think every business right now is finding it hard to find people. Is that, everybody shaking their head, yes, yeah. Ryan, your name?
Bill Sinks,
Bill, and then,
Multi-Builders.
over here, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're finding the same issues as well as Andrea. Well, she's not in the building side of things, but one thing that has, I think, gone by the wayside, and I'm not really sure what the situation is, but we used to get occasionally people from the building trades from the school, and I don't think that's I think that's a program that's been canceled, I believe. I don't know what the town can do about that, but we haven't seen, it's hard, it is definitely challenging to get younger people into the trades as opposed to other avenues, so.
Let me just comment on that. The Career Center is starting their building trades program back out for this coming fall. To help with that, people could encourage young people to sign up so they have enough candidates to enter the program. Otherwise, they won't be able to run it. So if you know anybody that's interested, that's a rising junior this fall, I encourage them to get into that, because, yeah, that was canceled like 4 years ago, but they're bringing it back because of, you know, companies like yours that are saying we can't find anybody. And then they'll also have to find an instructor, so if you know anybody interested in being an instructor at the Career Center, they'll be putting out that job, you know, probably early summer to fill for the fall semester.
Speaking on behalf of Middlebury Studio School, and I know others who are in more creative entrepreneur businesses, just affordable spaces for creative businesses is completely unattainable feeling. And with that culture of downtown planning and access to out-of-the-box community space, civic space, thinking of how key that is to a vibrant downtown center, and the two aren't matching up. Like, we may be having a conversation about, yes, we need vibrancy in our downtown, but the creative capacity to provide that infrastructure isn't matching that at the moment. So there's a dearth of supporting bricks and mortar for that. And, you know, a lot of that seems to be from the landlord angle. But also, like, conversation with landlord and town. Like, there's just this big gaps in that connection.
And that's something the committee's talked about quite a bit, is should there be a position person or somebody that's looking at what's available in town, how we get empty spaces filled, things like that. John?
Just to follow up, when you say there's a lack of community spaces, would you describe, what do you mean by community? You mean you can't use space in the library, or you can't use space in the EMT facilities, or you can't use space at the Congregational Church?
Sure, I can clarify what I mean. Well, let's take the Middlebury Studio School as an example of a creative business that you're providing a service that, sure, they run programs wherever they can find a space. They're out on Route 7.
Yeah, I've taken classes.
But they also do provide satellite classes at Hannaford's Career Center. They've gone into the library before. They eke out little spots to do satellite programs, but it's very hard to find a home, a more permanent home for a creative community service like that. Like, for example, other things that fall into a service like that that needs a home that's hard for this community is like the teen center, or a space that's an alternative downtown space for residents at Otter Creek. Places that can be more of a permanent home for workshops, classes,
Are you saying you
events.
just can't afford the rents?
Right, it's
Or
very
there's no
hard.
space?
It's very hard for like a nonprofit such as the Studio School to be able to afford rents that are happening
So
right
it's
now.
the rent that's the problem?
Rent is a huge problem, yeah.
Thank you.
Related to that, I just want to put a plug in for the new makerspace at the Hannaford Career Center, which can partner on things like that. They're partnering with the solid waste district on their repair evenings, where you bring in, a broken zippers, and somebody's there to help you fix it. But the makerspace is open on Thursday nights at the Career Center. And they have the sewing lab, computer lab with 3D printing, And the wood, not wood, but
Building trades.
building trade room is open as well. And if anybody is interested in being a mentor, the more mentors we get, and that doesn't have a lot of responsibility except for being there and helping people. But the more mentors there are for a particular trade, the more labs can open up. So just wanted to throw that out there for that.
Hi, I'm Kelly Hickey with Edie and Glow out in Waybridge, and I'd like to actually speak to that, people showing up as mentors. My son was a landscape student at the Hannaford Career Center, and the reason that he got a job successfully in the landscape industry is because his boss showed up. He came, he visited the school, and he said, "Who wants to work for me?" And there were kids raising their hands. So I feel like if you show up saying we need people in the building trades, kids will say, "I didn't know that. I would be interested in learning the building trades." Or "I'd love to learn design and how to do web pages. I don't know that you need that." So I think it's important. I go to many of the board meetings for both Hannaford Career Center and the high school, and I don't see any of you there. Show up. I'd also like to speak to the space issue. I volunteered this holiday season to do 2 pop-ups at Clay's as a citizen. The reason that I did it is because my business is online. It's called Edie and Glow, and it's on Etsy. I sell vintage, repurposed home goods and clothing. And I have tried for 5 years to find a community space to produce my goods with like-minded businesses that I only need for 3 or 4 months out of the year. There's no temporary facility that I can rent for 3 or 4 months out of the year to get my production done. The other months, I'm actually selling in the Burlington City Artist Market, which is 23 Saturdays out of the year. My business is very successful. So I went to Clay's, or I went to Better Middlebury Partnership, and both Amy and Karen were gracious about saying, you know, we'll work to get the space available for you if you can pull in some vendors. I had a bank of vendors who were willing to come and do it, so much so that I had to do it 2 nights because there were so many people wanting to come out. I would highly encourage the town to find more facilities for us to bring that energy downtown. I did it as a volunteer base, but I don't want you to think that I didn't benefit. My business did bank. And I will continue to look for more spaces for myself and for my buddies, but I would like to see Middlebury make it easier.
Great, thank you for
So did-
talking about businesses going into the schools. One of the groups that Addison County Economic Development Corporation has started is the Addison County Workforce Development Task Force, and to address some of the workforce development issues that were brought up earlier. But that's one thing that we're concentrating on, is getting more business people into the schools, both high schools, middle school, and the Career Center, to talk to kids early and often.
And the kids would regard the word task force as being 2 very negative words that they never want to hear.
Right.
We're
bringing on another person to help us rebrand our.
I have
our
an
organization.
audience of 4 children between the ages of 18 to 24, and both my husband and I sit on many task forces, and they never ever want to hear where we're headed. So please just reduce that language.
Absolutely.
And just show up as a concerned citizen. You know, we can all do that. We can all step out of our place of where we are and just meet them where they are.
Well, we're looking for a young person on that group, so.
Oh,
tell
don't
them
do
about
it.
And they can help us rebrand. John, did you have something, or?
Just a follow-up comment or question. One of the, it takes a long time for our business, Ben with Woodchuck, to find, to fill open positions, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Went to a job fair last month, there wasn't a single lead for a job. I know the business in Virgins, he had 90 open positions, the director of ops there, and he didn't get 1 lead to fill. So business owners are going to job fairs hosted by the town or economic development. So if that's not where the young people are looking for jobs, we need to think about where they are, because I think businesses go to a job fair thinking they'll find employees, and they're not finding anything.
Okay.
I just wanted to follow up before we lose track on Kelly's comments too, and your comments as well about the variable between the rent and having the space. And I think the reality is that some of the smaller businesses probably operate on smaller margins, and so they don't have the resources to put the money down for a rental situation. So perhaps filling that gap, or finding resources, or funding, or grant opportunities, or whatever it might be. You know, oftentimes it's the town or some nonprofit that has to sign off on those grants, but I think that in itself would be a great opportunity for Middlebury to try to steamroll something like this for spaces like that, for people who are in Kelly's position, need some of that space. Maybe you need it for 3 months of the year, but maybe somebody else needs it for a different 3 months of the year.
Good idea. Good to get that. It's, one of the specific things we're charged to look at is a couple of the funds that the town has, and what to do with them. So it's good to put that in the mix. You had something?
Yeah, I just
Say
wanted,
your name, please.
Peggy Burns, just to also mention, just this perception, because we see this with our Middlebury College students all the time, that there are no jobs here. And that's the thing, you know, in terms of things like career fairs or whatever, again, it's a perception. And one of the things that we found that we fund probably between 10 and 20 internships in downtown Middlebury every summer with various nonprofits and some businesses as well, that when students spend a summer here, they end up saying that they're just, it's a whole different experience because they don't have the burden of all their academics, they have fun, they get to enjoy the outdoors, and to every single one they will say, this should be a requirement in Middlebury College, you have to spend one summer here, kind of the way Dartmouth does. But, and I'm not suggesting that, I'm just saying that if the opportunities are there and again, students are made aware of it, and I think, Fred, it comes back to what you said too about kind of rebranding. There are a lot of Vermont organizations, a lot of different task force and development offices, and in fact, there's probably too many in the sense of focus and trying to, you know, there's Think VT and there's Chambers of Commerce and everything else, but that one consistent message that why you would want to live and work in Middlebury, in Addison County, in Vermont.
I think Dan had something he wanted to say.
Dan, that's fourth and goal. I just wanted, on Amy's comment about, was there a rental fee for Clay's during the holiday or something?
No.
Does anyone?
We negotiated a no rental fee.
Right, okay.
I sweet talked a lot.
No, we asked and we explained what we wanted to do and the benefit that we felt it would bring to the town, and they worked with us on it, so.
And that's thanks to Duncan, who's the real estate broker who's got it listed, and the owners of that building.
Yeah.
I mean, the alternative for them was they have an empty storefront that looks like crap.
Right. We also did the window. Amy actually paid for the flower boxes to get redone. She went
I think
and
it's
cleaned
great.
it, so
I think
yeah.
it's great.
And I want to thank them for trusting me to be able to actually put that together. And I think that happened because we had this meeting with Duncan, and Duncan saw that like we weren't fooling around. Our businesses depend upon it. And that group came from a few people here in Middlebury, but also the Burlington City artists who I work with in the summer already knew how to move through a setup like this. But it allowed the people who are makers here to see how easy it can flow. And they took a lot of great tips out of it. So now if I went back and did one of these pop-ups again, I would trust that we would follow the same formula and they could mentor other entrepreneurs to come into that space and learn the efficiency of it. Because we had to load in from Main Street at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I thought, oh, we're gonna have all this problem because of parking and traffic. The people could not have been nicer that were waiting in line on Main Street because they were curious and they wanted to know what was going on. And people that night parked far, far away, and they were coming into the pop-up saying, oh my gosh, you know how far I had to walk, but I stopped at these 3 places and bought all of this stuff, and I was actually able to have dinner or make reservations somewhere, and I saw my neighbors. That, to me, that community, like, sighting of each other is important, an important reason why the parking is so good in our town, because it's on the outside edges of town. If we put parking right downtown, we don't see each other. We just go into the place and we get into our car and leave.
Okay, so I want to try to move on to another question. Hopefully we'll have time at the end just for any Any other comments? But, so what, do you have any suggestions, specific suggestions that we could recommend to the town on programs, services, tools? You know, think tax credits, things like that, but it doesn't have to be that. That the town could consider policy changes. Let me flip that on its head, recognizing, which I've heard this before, that you don't go looking to the town to help you, but are there things the town is doing that they shouldn't be doing, getting out of the way, so to speak, or anything along those lines? Good things they could put in place that help a business grow, or things they're doing that aren't so helpful that should be reconsidered. Sivan?
Steve On from Stonecutter Spirits on Exchange Street. I think one thing that's awesome about Middlebury's town design is that there are a ton of ways to go through the town and no ways to go around the town. So it's annoying for other reasons, right? And it's annoying that it forces semi-traffic to come through when that's relevant. But it also means that, I think it's one of the reasons that our town is as vibrant as it is, though obviously we have struggles, that all the car traffic, all people come through, they see all the things that are out there. So especially when it comes to Main Street businesses, retail in general, I think that's actually a key reason why we have some of the health we have. But I also think that opens up some of the opportunities of how the town has changed over time. I'm thinking specifically about Exchange Street. For all of us who are on Exchange Street, I think there are two huge opportunities that have been talked about forever, which are safety related, which is sidewalk around all of Exchange Street, which, you know, if we don't deal with that soon, we're gonna have some significant, very unfortunate, you know, like life-ending situations where someone's, you know, it's gonna be bad, and we should be offering, instead of the alternative, people want to have sidewalks and, you know, come out to our
Smith's
businesses.
going down this year.
Well, but still, that's phase one, and it's gonna be like phase one's been talked about for 4 years, and it's finally gonna happen. That's only gonna go for the first, you know, quarter of Exchange Street. So more help with that. And number two is we really need a traffic circle at the north end of town where Route 7 hits Exchange Street. That's also been talked about forever. I know that's a state-involved project.
Yeah, and it's on
but
their tip.
yeah, so and both of those they've been talked about forever. But anything and everything we can do to speed them up or get them sooner, and be thinking about them, because I think the way that the downtown is vibrant, I think that can continue to grow in other parts of the town that are growing too, like Exchange Street, and the extent that you can make it more hospitable with things like sidewalk, and that you can make it a little safer, and not have people worried, like literally, how do I leave Exchange Street at 5 p.m.? You can't. You sit and wait behind 20 cars because no one can turn out because everyone's afraid they're gonna get hit. It's like things like that, like they end up, you know, discouraging the actual, what could be the economic health there. And you would have things like, I'm not gonna speak for Paul and Vermont Coffee, but maybe they would stay open later than 2 if we had a sidewalk and you could actually leave at 5 p.m. Things like that, I think a lot of that doubles and triples on itself.
Anybody else on this question? Yeah.
Ben Wells, Marquee Theater, and not too long ago, Rough Cut Restaurant. The sidewalks for me are definitely a big thing with the town. I last winter myself shoveled the sidewalk between the two businesses repeatedly, and watching people come in and try and talk to as many people coming through the doors as possible, and regularly hear complaints about how treacherous it is. So I would love to see the town have a bigger role in snow removal, ice removal, things like that. And I think, you know, the points that have been made, that there's this vibrancy where parking's on the outside, we're walking inside, embracing that, making it easier to walk around. And that, when there's better footing, better maintained sidewalks, I think that really contributes, encourages foot traffic, which helps all the businesses.
Sir?
Just to build on that,
Okay.
Ross Conrad,
Ross.
not just the ice and snow, but just the maintenance of the sidewalks. We got sidewalks right on the Main Street here that have huge holes in them, like inch or 2 deep. Like, that's dangerous too.
Is it okay to, oh, sorry. Oh,
Go ahead, then we'll go to Andrew.
I just wanted to add on to, or just respond to a couple comments. I can't help it as a planner.
Recovering planner.
I'm still a planner. But you have a new regional transportation planner in the regional planning. Mike Winslow, great guy. He's from Virgins, really responsive. So write his name down for Exchange Street stuff and the roundabout stuff, because he wants to talk to people like you.
Rock on.
And then a challenge I see, and Ben and I sat down last year a little bit to talk about different grants that are available for downtown businesses. And there seems to be a disconnect of what grants and programs are available to downtown businesses. Because Middlebury is a designated downtown, that means they're part of a state program of designated downtowns, and there are benefits to businesses within designated downtowns, and I think that is not known, but what those benefits are not known by many of the downtown businesses. So that needs to reach the businesses on the ground. For example, can I talk about your doors for a second? Ben had to replace his doors. There's grants for facade makeover on historic
Elevators,
buildings.
safety.
But Ben didn't know about that. And it wasn't really my job to go in, but because I love my town, I'm a resident here, and I love what you're doing at the Marquee, and I know what exists at the state level, that connection wasn't made, and we made it, but it was too late. That came out of Ben's pocket. There are resources available at the state level for designated downtowns that businesses need to be aware of, because then you can proactively advocate for yourself and bring that to the table, to the town, and to committees like this, so that we remember those exist.
Would a refresher on the designated downtown program and what it means to downtown businesses be helpful to people? I mean, Karen and I could partner and make that happen and bring the state people here and tell you what all the grant programs that are available.
That would be very useful.
Right.
I've never heard about this
Right.
facade grant thing, and I have $7,000 worth of brickwork to do on my building.
You gotta contact them up front, make sure you're up front.
Yeah.
In addition to the infrastructure improvements that I think are clearly necessary in the downtown out to Exchange Street for safety purposes and for accessibility for all kinds of people with all kinds of mobility issues, whatnot. I also think that the signage in this town is absolutely horrendous. There's no consistency with the signage. You have street signs, you have the college signs, you have parking signs, you have no parking signs, some of which are right next to each other. You have striping on the roads that, I mean, even if you look out at the sidewalk, here are the red sort of brick painted, it's all faded, it all looks like crap. I agree, I think I hadn't heard that justification of people driving through town and the connections that when you walk down the street and you see people rather than driving right up in front of a business, popping in and coming out. But I love that concept, particularly as an argument to the parking question. I've always been a firm believer that we actually do have plenty of parking spaces in the town of Middlebury. They're just not utilized on an appropriate level. And part of that is because we don't have good signage. So most of us in the room probably know where most of the public parking spaces are, but I bet there's spaces out there that you have no idea even exist. And so if that's true of the people in this room who live, work, and breathe Middlebury, think about it when you're a visitor to this town and you drive down Main Street, how do you know where to park? So I would like to see the town put a real concerted effort to some consistent signage that directs people to the right spaces for them.
And there's a committee of the.
Well, there's a pseudo committee that sort of branched out of neighbors together, but honestly, we're not professionals. This is really not something we have the capacity to do on our own. We can go to DPW and say, we need 10 signs here, there, and everywhere, but that just adds to the inconsistency of what's going on right now. I think that if that was done as an overhaul with the town, directing people, and I know Marble Works is private property, but tough noogies, like people should know where it is.
We don't treat it as public, we treat it as public. Okay, I treat it as
From
public. I tell people
we do
park
too, but
here.
from a
Park
signage
here.
perspective, like
It's
the
okay.
argument has been, well, the town isn't gonna spend money to direct people to the Marble Works because it's privately owned property, which is hogwash. I mean,
It is
it's true, but it's hogwash that we don't just all play in the sandbox.
Because that's not how it was
healthy together.
originally
Right,
presented.
right.
When it first began. Sorry.
That's okay.
That's true.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Andrew.
I have a couple points I'd like to make. One, Bruce Baker, I'm sorry. One is, I agree with Amy on the fact that we don't have as much of a parking problem as we have a parking perception problem. And it seems like with the right campaign, we could really break that down. And we're also embarking on a new area where every holiday party I went to, everybody said to me, oh, what's happening downtown? Well, probably more to anybody who's a business owner than they would to somebody else. But they started, oh, the restaurants we've lost, the buildings, the empty stores, they go on and on and on. That's not gonna help. And one thing that really did help was fixing Clay's up, because you drive by, looks festive, it doesn't look like a missing tooth and a smile. And we're starting to get a lot of missing teeth. And not everybody had a bad business downtown. I mean, some of us did great. And we need to get that word out, because that's what brings people down. Because everybody gets on board, jumps off the sinking ship. And a lot of people that complain the most about the downtown haven't been downtown in years, and they'll admit it. And our biggest problem, I think, is perception. And if we could get the right campaign going, we have free parking in this town. Where do you have that? To put some of these points out of where to park, there's always, the people that know where the places are. But a lot of people don't know where they are, and if we put the right kind of spin on it, I think we would see a positive effect from that without spending a lot of money.
Andrea Murray. I, as a business owner, but also as a planner and architect, there aren't a lot of moderately scaled pieces of real estate for purchase for smaller business owners, such as ours. We employ 11 people. I would love to see the town reconsider how to develop the EDI site behind here. A lot of communities over time, including ours, have been smaller pieces of real estate that were affordable for smaller businesses. You could solve many problems at the same time. I think you could, I'd buy a piece of property, I'd build a building, we could have our storefront, we could have some housing up above. It could be scaled, it could be really beautiful and organic, because each piece would be designed by a separate entity for a separate use. I think it would be much more attractive than one big, large building, and it might encourage other small businesses to develop and grow here as well. Because there are a few large pieces of commercial real estate for sale, but we've been eyeing for a long time, and there really isn't anything in the walkable downtown, and we're committed to being a walkable downtown. So thank you.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to thank Jim Gish for all his keeping everybody up to date with what's happening in the whole railroad corridor thing. But so communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if the town, like the email blast that you had sent out, or someone had sent out, it's just very educational. And for me, as a business owner who's pretty much centered on my business, I read my emails, and it helps me to know what is going on, because I do live under my rock.
Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a perspective. Often when I hear people talking about Middlebury and downtown, there's concern about competition with online retailers, and clearly that has an issue with small brick and mortar stores, and that's been the bread and butter of my business for decades. But from the perspective of online now, we have 41 people, and 25% of my people can be counted as attributed to online business. Website, Amazon, and there's probably nobody making things in Middlebury that is not having a number of jobs being attributed to online business. I know it's, our customer list across the country of small Main Street stores is down by over a third in probably 5-6 year period of time. So we're kind of in a self-preservation mode in that balance, I guess. So everybody's struggling with it. But in the sense of economic development, I mean, it is a part of online is a positive part of the community as well. So I just put that out there for perspective.
We both agree.
We do. And even I would like to echo that as a bookstore owner. You'd think that we'd be worst off, but we have grown our online business significantly in the last year, and it's nice to see that people are learning that you can shop online and locally. And I think that's another, like Bruce said, positive message that we can get out to people. It's not an either-or proposition.
Is there a need for, and Sarah's listening, I know, is there a need for small business owners to have workshops and to learn about how to take advantage of online selling and integrate it into into your sales, or is that something you can do on your own? You don't need any help with that?
For me, it's about 5 years late. We're already doing it.
You're already doing it.
We're already doing it. Yeah. And I sell locally online, so I have a lot of local customers who shop when they feel like it, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I'll deliver it to them later.
I think it's a messaging thing. I think I too have gotten beyond the structure, the infrastructure of my online business. It's about communicating with people in town that we have a website and it works very well.
Karen, did you see that article in Main Street Center about online services? It might be worth getting that to these people, because it had some very specific recommendations for how small retail establishments
You talking
could
about
benefit
the
from
webinar?
What?
The webinar, right?
The webinar, yeah.
That was pretty helpful.
Yeah.
Any more on that, or we're gonna move to another question? Is that all right? Go ahead.
Jordan with Aqua IT. I wanted to speak to what Claire was saying about grants, and I kind of categorize that as incentives for businesses, and businesses not being aware of them, and maybe some people on the committees, including the select board, not aware of incentives. And we went through this, Aqua IT did about a year ago, where we brought something to the select board that was 12 or 15 years old, and paraphrasing their response, it was basically, we're not familiar with this, let's take time to think about it. We're not familiar with this, let's bring it up next year after our annual committee meeting. And I'm not up to speed on where they are now, but what sort of, we should all get on the same page, and I think that's why we're here, what sort of incentives, if we want to bring businesses downtown, which generally speaking we do, what grants and incentives and property tax abatements are there if we want to go that way. And I think it would help, I don't know what the committees are looking at, but for us to understand what do the majority of people here in this town think is a successful case study of a downtown business or downtown with a population this size. Understanding we're all not all going to agree on what is success, but what are we all working towards? Or is there a case study you can share with us in Seattle where they have outdoor markets or kind of downtown new modern type malls, but if real estate is an issue, maybe businesses need to get together and there should be a structure on Exchange Street with a sidewalk getting out there that businesses could share. So a successful case study, I think, is my point. It would be interesting for us to know what might we be working towards, and then also just getting on the same page of how do we want to incentivize businesses to come here.
Well, I think one of the purposes of this committee was to address that question and give them recommendations on incentives for business, and using the word incentive broadly. I come from state government with its very specific incentive programs for businesses, but there's all kinds of things that could incentivize a business. So let me put it out to you. What could the town do? Remember, limited resources, to help incentivize businesses to come here or grow here. We're going to be making a specific recommendation on this to the town. So, love to hear your thoughts. Scott, you had something.
I have to leave in 5 minutes, but I just kind of wanted to paraphrase a couple of things I've heard. It sounds like some of the things that I've heard in the past, not necessarily in this meeting, is that the town could step away from some limitations on signage and whatnot, revamp its confusing signage as well. And also the town needs a nightlife, but it also needs skilled workers. But skilled workers are generally college graduates who have, burgeoning families, and they want a place for their kids to go after school. They want a community. They want a downtown with a wholesome nightlife. And we also have people who need, maker spaces here in town that also add to that nightlife. And someone a while ago came up with a great idea. Let's take a defunct property and basically multi-purpose it out. And we've also heard people talk about incubators as well. Maybe what the town needs to do is we all need to come up with some very specific things we'd like to see the town do, stop do, and create a decent sized project, sort of point towards one specific project here in town, right? Availability of space and incubator business, and find a location that we can shove a bunch of people into and see if it works and see if they can then expand outward. And also grants for things like fixing up locations. We moved from a location that really needed a lot of revamping and needed a new heating system. We were willing to put money towards that, and we moved here. We need to help businesses, and we need to help businesses who are starting out, and we need to get them the resources they need. And we do need the town to help with that, but we also need the town to, at a certain point, also say, all right, we're not going to hinder what you're going to do as well. Sounds like that's generally what I mean.
Any other thoughts on that? And anybody that hasn't talked yet, we start there. On incentives, both positive and getting out of the way, negative. Yes, sir.
I know Bill Brooks with the Shelter Museum. I know nothing about Ben Franklin and the challenges, but is that a building?
Someone came up with that idea of essentially the town buying it, putting a bunch of incubators in there, a bunch of small businesses.
Right.
Stonecutter Spirits having essentially like a permanent pop-up in there.
First I'm hearing about that.
And it would be a bunch of outlier businesses using that as a marketplace. And this is another person's idea. Like this isn't my idea. I think it's a great idea. I think that person's a genius. But
someone would have to come up with a lot of money to make it usable.
yeah, that building is destitute.
That's what I don't know about.
I would just like to add to that recap, because that was an awesome recap, but the timeliness is really important. 5 years ago, Stonecutter Spirits, Caroline Stream, and my own business sat down with the town, and we tried to create an incubator. But they wanted to stick us way out on Exchange Street, and only one of us was successful. And the others of us couldn't commit because they said we were gonna get sidewalks and lights and a roundabout out there, and it'll be great, and it'll work just like you want it. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we just invested more money in our homes. But I'm now outgrowing my home, and at points, so is this one. So, it's like.
With your business.
Yeah, with my business. So timeliness.
Any other thoughts on the incentive idea, grants, any kind? First, Yvonne, then Russ, sorry.
This is a statewide issue, but if we could do something in Middlebury, it makes us way more attractive. So at least within the state, that might be a vacuum that pulls more folks here, is childcare. And childcare has been there's such a shortage of childcare, and that impacts small businesses, big businesses, you name it. And to the extent, I don't always love, in fact, I rarely love asking a municipality to throw money at a problem. I prefer other types of solutions, but that's one that does feel right for the town throwing money at the problem. And if there was some version of whether the town incentivizes childcare providers to exist, or the town offers subsidized childcare to parents, which therefore makes it easier to afford and therefore creates more demand. We already have demand, but creates it makes it more feasible for more childcare centers to open. Anything we can do on that front makes us so much more competitive. And when we're talking about recruiting folks in, bringing them in, some of the challenges like trailing spouses and things like that, if we can address any of those problems together, those are potentially huge impacts.
There's a lot of people on a regional level, trying to address that on a regional level, the providers, the statewide organizations that help childcare, our organization, many others that are, and they're looking at some kind of regional fund that might go either way, either to the parents or to the providers. Because the big issue is equity and pay and keeping people in the industry. Because they work many more hours than public education and get paid a lot less, with no benefits. So it's an issue, but it is, people are looking at it, so hopefully we'll address some of the issues. It's something over here. Is this Farhad?
Claire had something to say.
Fahad, did you have something?
Ross was.
No,
next.
I do have something to
Sorry.
say.
Ross was next.
Hey, Ross, go.
So I think something that would really help is to bring the farmer's market downtown. There's been talk about it, whether it'll actually happen or not, who knows? But for some reason, there's this wall between when the business community thinks of itself, it doesn't think of the agricultural industry, which is a major industry in Middlebury. Farmers are businesses. And for some reason, there's this kind of, like, I wasn't here for all the introductions, but I suspect I'm the only farmer here. And I don't know why that is. The farmers have the same problem. They don't think of themselves as part of you. And so bringing the farmers market downtown might help to break down that wall. It will help to integrate these different varied types of businesses. And I think it's an important thing to be thinking about.
Anybody want to address that particular issue that's been around here?
That's not necessarily that issue, because I don't know the answer of why the separation of the descriptions. But specific to the farmer's market is, when the discussion about the park came up, and there was a lot of what I consider misinformation, because I'm gonna get my information about what the farmer's market wants and what they need and what they need to grow and expand from the farmer's market. It's going back to the dialogue and keeping the positivity going. I've heard a number of discussions about the farmer's market and about why they shouldn't be downtown from people I've never, ever seen at the farmer's market. So, I think to Ross's point, I think the farmer's market in this town could be amazing. It would be spectacular, and there's so many more people who would participate in it if it was this collaborative effort and where it was fostered for the farmer's market to happen, rather than, that doesn't work for us, sorry, can't do that. So I think from the town's perspective, the town can do whatever they can to make sure that the farmer's market, because the farmer's market downtown helps everybody.
Yep.
Across the board, everybody.
Is the town saying it can't be done?
There have
It's a
been
location issue.
there have been, but there have been enough of those conversations on the sidebar that, even talking about the curbing, like, can you put this kind of curbing and that kind of curbing, there were enough negative comments, again, a lot from people who aren't participants or visitors to the farmer's market, but I just think, back to the dialogue, I think it needs to stay favorable, and I do think.
And I would just throw out there that there's a project in the works that is gonna address the incubator question. It won't satisfy everybody's issues with having an incubator space, vendor space for farmers and others, and another restaurant back in downtown. So that's in the works right now. Jim?
Yeah, Fred, I just wanted to point out on the farmer's market front that the select board just approved a design for Triangle Park that includes or incorporates a lot of hardscape. This was a big push from the community, Neighbors Together, and the BMP to allow farmer's market, food-a-roo, town hall theater events, other events to take place right in the center of our town that would bring people into the center of town for those events.
Just one more thing on the farmer's market, and then just another thing the town, I think, could do. So the farmer's market, just again, we just need to hear a resounding yes attitude from the town that they want the farmer's market. There is that voice isn't heard, and there was a beautiful letter written by the president of the Farmers Market Board, Hannah Sessions, who owns Blue Ledge Farm, who very much rallied and made sure she was at all the Triangle Park meetings, because that is going to be actually really large space, and you can kind of see now that the machinery is out the way that is a huge space, and people were thinking, oh, it's just the Triangle again. Shouldn't be even calling it Triangle. Like, it's a big open space right in the ultimate central location, and we should be hearing from the town farmer's market, what can we do to have you here? Because we need you and you need us. And there's over 250 local food producers in Addison County, and we should be celebrating that as our identity right here in the middle of town.
I would just point out, the
Yeah.
farmer's market is also craft people and artists.
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
It's not just farmers.
Yes. And then the other thing, just on another really tangible thing that the town could work on, thinking about flexible spaces and zoning and the DRB and the design review committee, like those folks really need to come together with the economic development committee, come together with Gary Holloway at the downtown program to get up to speed on incentives and how that relates to your policy and your zoning, and thinking more flexibly in your conditional zoning, reuse of spaces such as the Aurora School, St. Mary's. These are just examples. I don't know what's going on with them, but being able to have some flexible zoning where appropriate, with the end goal of economic vibrancy for your town, and not having those policies cap you out at a status quo level. And that happens a lot in this room with those committees, and it's not anyone's fault on those committees, it's just that there's some communications that aren't happening between people who know what those tools are and the people that are on those committees. And that should be a welcoming workshop for anyone on that committee. Like, here's some new zoning that this town in Vermont did, and it was amazing. It took that wall away from something creative happening in your town.
Do you have examples of towns that have done this flexible zoning, or somebody who could come talk
Sure.
to our committee about it?
Sure. It's not my job anymore, but.
We did have Gary
Yeah.
did come and talk to our committee about
Yeah.
the tools that are available at the state.
Gary Holloway would be great, and I think you could also, he could bring a policy person with him to talk about case studies and precedents.
And he also did say that, they had those town plans and those little things that they had written up that we could have access to sort of cut and paste and see if it would work for us, where they do exactly that.
Mike, and then we're gonna go on to another question unless anybody really wants to talk about something we already talked about.
Mike Corbett with VITA. I talk to businesses all day, every day, statewide, about similar challenges to this, but I'm going to keep it to one kind of specific, and it's building on what Claire said. And Claire and I are both, full disclosure, on the Middlebury Area Land Trust Board, so, but she mentioned Aurora School, and I'm wondering if there couldn't be some sort of, in the name of economic development or something else, exemption to some of the zoning, DRB, et cetera, things that seem to be written very black and white, and that's great because it makes decisions easy, but when there's a case that clearly is screaming that it makes sense and we can't make an exception. So this is a specific case that happened in this town, Fred, where the Middlebury Land Trust has seen the need for childcare that Siobhan mentioned, and we've responded to that. We have had summer camps for years. I found out last year that on average we've been leaving 100 slots, 100 children without the ability to go to summer camp per summer because we just didn't have the capacity. And so we're making a huge effort to capture every kid that wants to go to summer camp this coming summer. But then we also noticed that after school and early release days and breaks, typically a lot of the preschools follow the school calendar, so they're also closed. So we've added after-school programming and some other things, a lot of it in partnership with Aurora, to the point where it might make sense for us to co-locate with Aurora. But because we are a conservation organization that needs office space, we can't, the zoning doesn't allow for that, for us to be in Aurora providing education in a building that's meant to provide education, which seems like a clear way to solve a childcare issue. We're not going to be inconvenient to the neighbors.
Doesn't zone for education.
No, we wouldn't provide childcare. We can't locate malt there because we need general professional office space, and that is education.
I got you.
So we're actually potentially investigating branding malt as an education organization, because we may actually provide more education than we do conservation at this point. But why should we have to jump through those hoops? Just it solves an easy problem. It's right in your face. And so that's just a very frustrating
And the
example.
bus stops there.
Yeah, there's a million reasons why it should be done, and the fact that it's written in black and white that, we're not an education organization, then we can't do it.
Well, waivers in the name of economic development has been impossible at the state level, but maybe we can do it on the.
Okay, I said I'd only say one thing, but the second thing is that, I think Siobhan said, if we want to be competitive within the bounds of the state of Vermont, which I think we need to be competitive beyond that, but within the state of Vermont, everyone knows what a nightmare it is to get any sort of permitting done. So if we can just be that much less onerous than the next town over, we're in advance. So why can we just do that? Like start there? That might be a good way to go.
Can I just follow?
Let me introduce the next question, and then we'll go back over here, just so you're thinking about it, next, because we are running out of time. Want to ask you, if you are not located downtown, an appropriate space came available, would you move your business to the downtown? If you are downtown, have you ever thought about moving out, Exchange Street or down Route 7 South? And what was the reason for that? Is there something that forced you out of the downtown or something? All right, so we had John and Scott, right? Go ahead.
I do have to go, actually.
All right, Scott, you go. And then-
I'm actually gonna take off.
Okay.
I can remember my thought for later. Thank you, folks.
Thanks,
All right,
Scott.
Scott.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Yep, I want to hear what they have to say.
All right, so on that question, anybody? Susan?
I'm not big enough to move downtown to brick and mortar, but what I'm looking for is pop-up opportunities. If the farmer's market was downtown, I'd be in there. If there was more midnight strolls and the summer block party, I'd be there. So those opportunities to collaborate with brick and mortar stores downtown already, so that I help bring in business to them and to myself at the same time, that's what I'm looking for.
Ross?
I would just, this is not me specifically, but I served on the board of directors of the Middlebury Co-op for many years. And I can tell you that they chose to build and expand in their current, Washington Street, which is, I guess, not considered officially downtown, but it's right next to downtown. They chose to stay there because they didn't want to add to the sprawl. They wanted to keep the downtown vibrant, keep people coming down here. And I think, so that's what, and now they did that because the majority of members through a survey wanted that. That's what the people wanted who were members of the co-op. They're really concerned about community and spreading out too much, not keeping us concentrated.
Does anybody know, is that in the designated downtown, that area?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Oh, is it?
And again, they sat in, the co-op sat in on that meeting that we had 5 years ago about an incubator space. And they were also.
The co-op did.
The co-op did. And they were also interested in joining the incubator because they were looking for refrigeration. And so when you're thinking about incubator space, it has to be able to be changeable, I think. And yeah, I would also be interested, not in a year lease, but in a month-to-month or a quarterly lease. And long-term, I'm not just talking about a year, but like every year I would need that.
Oh, interesting. You sign like policy, first quarter of the year, every year, or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fred, I have a sort of follow-up question on the incubator topics coming up a lot. Is the expectation that the town would finance spaces like this, or would they make it more easy for developers to come and do it? Anybody have a view on that?
My sense is that it would, the latter, that it would be better for the town to foster those relationships or make it easier for investors to come in and to create those spaces and let somebody else, I don't think it's the town's response. What's that?
By removing red tape and regulations,
Yeah.
or by?
Yeah.
Tax abatement, maybe?
Yes.
For developers?
Okay.
The DRB, the zoning, all those kind of things. Helping wherever you can helps the developers feel comfortable there.
And there could be some private-public partnership to get it going.
Sure.
And don't forget, I didn't hear a lot of input on the incentives and grants. tools the town could put in place to help, or what they should do to not hinder. I think I saw a hand over here.
Yeah, I just,
Tell you next.
Brian
Brian.
Phelps, Stonewall, I also was, a partner with NextBridge Partners. Out of curiosity, how many folks know anything about the EDI project? So the town of Middlebury, just to give a very brief history on something that goes back almost 20 years, owns a parcel of land behind this building. that
Parking
was-
lot. You're talking about the parking lot.
The parking lot, yes. Which was coined the EDI site, I think 15 years ago, which is Economic Development Initiative. In the process of the college and the town, moving the town offices over here and all the land swaps and et cetera, the college was a part owner of that parcel, and it's now entirely owned by the town. And they put out an RFQ for the development of that site several years ago, to which 4 developers submitted, and then subsequently an RFP was put out by the town. This was when Jamie Gaucher was involved at the town level. And our group, NextBridge Partners, submitted a proposal to develop that site. And we were the only ones of the 4 that submitted for the RFQ to actually submit a proposal. So there is an opportunity there, and a lot of the discussions that I've heard seem to revolve around real estate and space, and there certainly is an opportunity there and for development on a downtown parcel that the town actually controls. So the other part of this conversation, which I think, Fred, you keep bringing it back to, is what can the town do? And there are certain things that the town as a public entity can do, and then there are things that have to fall into the private sector. In my opinion, the town is not in the real estate business, nor will they ever be in the real estate business. However, they do happen to own or control a piece of real estate. So I would encourage everyone that has brought up issues around space, the need for space, and as well as any interest in what is either currently located or that they'd like to see located in downtown. Learn more about that site, and hopefully that conversation about what to do with that site continues, and I'm hopeful that it will. It's been on hold for over 2 years because the town wanted to do a downtown master plan and has applied for a grant that they didn't get. And unfortunately, I think that, maybe Nick, you know the answer to this, they've reapplied for the grant to try to do a downtown master plan before anything happens on that site. If that grant is received, or if the master planning process happens without the grant, that's going to be the opportunity to address, I think, or potentially address a lot of issues that have been raised today. So it's interesting to me how few people in this room know about the EDI project. Obviously, I'm intimately familiar with it, but I think it's really important that people, if you don't know about it, and I'm happy to be the person to talk to you about it, or anyone on the select board can probably give information as well. But that's I think an important thing to get up to speed on.
John and then Nick?
Brian, why wouldn't the Ben Franklin space be an opportunity to do what you have in mind?
Well, so the project that we proposed was 65,000 square feet. So the Ben Franklin building is very small
Well, but
in
it's got a
size.
big, it's got a large, it's very small now, but the footprint is at least twice the size of what's been used as the Ben Franklin.
The footprint.
Footprint goes almost down to where Woody's Restaurant used to be.
Yeah, understood. Well, one of the issues is that the cost to obtain that site is different. It's a privately owned
But the
property.
cost, the cost is actually the same. I mean, the cost of buying the property from the town was $1 million.
That's They never
That's
put a
debatable.
price, they never put a price tag on it. The town has never marketed
Okay,
the
so,
property
but
for
you
sale,
don't
but
think that, you don't think you could do something comparable at the Ben Franklin?
I'm not suggesting that there couldn't be something done at Ben Franklin. I think the economics of it probably, you're talking about a vacant lot versus an existing property. The economics of it are very different. The project's a very different project. I'm not suggesting that the Ben Franklin building isn't an opportunity for development. It's just a different opportunity in that it's currently controlled by a private owner. It's not a publicly owned property.
You know, it's interesting, as I said, I came here to hear, and I see this kind of breaking down into two categories. One is, what can we as a town do? You know, the issues, the infrastructure, both existing and that which needs to be, makes totally good sense to me. That's, you know, and infrastructure also includes the fact that we have an outstanding police department here, which keeps us safe. We have really good emergency responders, we have good public works. Those are things we can do. And the other element is to be able to smooth the way for the businesses that are here that want to expand, or those that want to come here, maintaining the quality of the town, but making it very predictable to them so that they're not running into these odd obstructions that prevent it. Because, you know, unfortunately, in the time I've been on the board here, which is now coming up on, what, 9-10 years, I can't remember now, it's been so much fun, is that the vast majority of people in this town are very, very positive and want things to happen. They want to maintain the quality of life and they want it to happen. But there's this element that is afraid and wants to obstruct things new. The view is that something new is going to be bad. And that's not the case. I mean, we have a wonderful town, we know that, and we want to do well. But I flew 150,000 miles last year, and so I saw a lot of other really wonderful towns that want to do well and are. I've seen some that aren't. We need to be on the R. So I see the things that we need to do, and I'm understanding more and more the things we need as a town. But then it's also things that we need to do as a total community to create the positive message. I've become a big fan of this downtown master plan concept, and I personally, as a board member, want to see it happen, whether we get this grant or we find another way to do it, with a very strict timeline for it to be developed, not something that carries out 5 years. Something I want to see happen in a year, so that when 2020 happens, which is going to be the hell year in downtown during construction, we just can't avoid that. It has to be done. There's going to be a 10-week closure. Yeah, it's going to be ugly, but we have to do it. But what happens when September 2020 is done and the 10-week closure is done? How do we really advance this town? What Brian and Nextbridge have proposed is one of those things that could fit, I think, quite well into this downtown master plan as a first phase. It doesn't address all of the stuff, but it's a first phase. Because what I see in communities that are succeeding is there's a couple of key anchors that get in there and show this is a happening place and we want to be part of it. What Stacy and Mary are talking about doing with this mill, I think, is one of those potential anchors. What EDI could be is another potential anchor, and then others want to be here. You know, when Jamie was here, there were other developers that were looking at properties and different ideas and what could be happening, but they never took it any further because there was fear that they would just run into a head wall that would never allow them to move it forward. So again, in kind of my brief summary, I'm hearing things, and I would welcome and want to see that put into the document that says what we as a town need to do. Then I'll think about what do we as the big town, the community, do to really create this positive environment, this can-do environment. So, you know, the people who go to the college who want to start a business here say, yeah, I want to stay and I can make it happen here and it's going to be good. And I'm part of that innovative economy that's going to be important. Because the innovative economy also is the thing that then allows the opportunities for the nonprofits to have their spaces. You know, it's the revenues coming in so that other things can happen. End of story.
Okay, we got a few more minutes, so last comments. We'll go, I saw Amy and then Ben, sorry.
Just my final comment, promise. The question you asked at the beginning of this meeting was, what can the town do to help?
That's one of them.
And in listening to all the discussions, and in particular Nick's summary that he just gave, when the town approved the funding for the position that was Jamie Gaucher's position. There was a lot of enthusiasm in the town, from a municipal side of things, the citizens, the college was on board, everybody was super psyched about hiring one person that could be this focal point, the one that was gonna try to wrap all these things and tie all these things together, and when it fell on its face, and it did, it was like everybody gave up. So it's my understanding that there's still money in that fund. I think to Brian's point with the EDI space, and as Nick was just saying, I feel like all the things that we've talked about here, it's just gonna continue to kick the can down the road unless somebody shows up, right? Somebody's gotta show up and do the job. And many of us are busy running businesses, and we can do our part on a volunteer basis, or we can sit on a committee and we can provide some steering and some guidance and some ideas. But it's gotta be somebody's job to do the job.
Yeah, one of the things the committee heard from Gary from the state, and we also had the woman who's kind of like Jamie's job in Waterbury. They gave us all kinds of models for different ways to do that.
Sure, I
And
can't
it
believe
doesn't
we have to
necessarily
recreate the
have to,
wheel.
we don't have to repeat the same model that failed. One of the models that might work here in Middlebury, and that's definitely one of the things the committee's talked about a lot and is gonna be in the recommendations. So, if you have any specific input on that, send it our way. Anybody else? Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
This isn't directly the town, but more the college. My understanding is that every college student is required to have full board. Perhaps partial board plans would help, because I think the students would really come down to the restaurants. They're passing retail. I know it was something when I was in college, not here, but one semester I lived in campus housing, but off from the center. We had a partial board plan. We walked downtown way more often. And I think that would help everybody downtown. More directly.
Theater pass too.
Directly in terms of what the town could do, and I don't know if this is feasible, but finding and retaining quality employees is challenging. Health insurance is prohibitively expensive for most small businesses. Perhaps some sort of town incentive or credit, either towards a health insurance program, or I happen to believe in wellness and quality of life programs. So we've had arrangements with Otter Creek Yoga, we've had arrangements with Middlebury Fitness, where we're doing back and forth marketing, and there's reduced class rates or membership rates for the employees to go. Perhaps the town could, and I think you're helping multiple businesses with each penny on that front, but if the town helps subsidize, then the businesses themselves aren't taking a hit and offering a class at a lower rate. Maybe the town makes up the difference there. Some sort of incentive to promote that, and I think that creates a climate where young people, old people, everyone, the employment is that much more attractive for people.
Sir.
I just want to say the most hopeful thing that I see here, I've been in this town for 40 years, I've done a lot of boards and committees and the Downtown Business Association and so forth, and what excites me the most is seeing the young people in the room. A few of them have already left, but I just get so energized by hearing something new, a different perspective, and I want to thank the young people that showed up here today, because it's sort of a new paradigm, and just keep it going.
Hey, you're very welcome.
Anybody else, any other quick thoughts? Well, thank you all for coming out to the committee, really appreciates it, really appreciate your input. We'll do some kind, Claire?
I'm so sorry, I need to interrupt, because can you just clarify, you're the Regional Economic Committee? Like,
No,
what's
no,
your
just to be
committee, and how
clear,
does it relate to town
The
economic?
town has created they had one last year, and they reconstituted the Middlebury Economic Health Committee. It's the town committee.
Okay.
I happen to be chairing it. I also happen to run the Economic Development Corporation for the region. I'm here as chair of this committee.
Thank you.
And other members of the committee are from businesses here in town, and with Farhad from the select board and the local business. So you're talking to a Middlebury Town Committee about all this. And
Right.
I can just bring a regional perspective, and I used to work for the state, so I have a state perspective. Senator Leahy, so I have a federal perspective. But anyway,
Fred.
Thank you.
enough about me. Spencer, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I got lots of notes here. But do you have a mechanism for afterthoughts?
Yes, as I said at the beginning, if you have any other thoughts or ideas, send them to that email address that was the RSVP address. It's a Middlebury Town email address. And I can you write this up there? Right there, right there. EHC mid, that's right, and that's the email address. You can send comments. I mean, let's try to get them by the end of the week, because I will try to put together a summary of today, and Middlebury Community Television will have a tape of this you can post, so you can watch yourself on TV.
And our meetings are public, and
These are-
anyone is.
Yeah, all of our
yeah.
meetings, including this one, are public meetings, because we're a public body of this town. So you're welcome to come to, we meet second and fourth Thursday of the month right here at noon to 1:30. Ross?
Could you just summarize what the deliverable, the final results of your committee's going to be?
We are charged to give recommendations to the town, according to what I read at the beginning, make recommendations to the select board regarding economic development tools, policies, strategies, and actions that the town can use to maintain and improve economic health of the community. Officially, we have to have a report to them by the end of 2020, but we expect to have it earlier than that, and also we can make interim recommendations along the way of things if there's something we think that the town could move on now, we can make a recommendation to the select board.
We have a webpage on the town
We do.
site, right?
You go
That
to
has
the
our
committee.
charge on it.
Yeah, if you go to the committee section of the town of Middlebury's website, the Middlebury Economic Health Committee is on there, and you can see all the information we're using, all the documents are all on there in our charge. We really appreciate you coming out and sharing your thoughts with us. Keep it coming. We'll work them into the recommendation we'll be making.
Thank you.
Thank you.